We've looked at people across the world on the edge of globalization. But what changes our lives changes nature too. Globalizing how we use nature's resources needs global cooperation. But as this story shows, that can be a long time coming, if it comes at all. Bluefin tuna. Beautiful, sleek, and we're loving it to death. As the world catches the taste for sushi, bluefin tuna is big business. One fish can sell for $100,000. But some say Atlantic bluefin, the kind caught in the Mediterranean, is on the verge of collapse. The rules that protect them don't work, and we've found out why. Our investigation reveals a $4 billion black market and a world where sometimes even the experts are all at sea.
Carmen, the BCDs of 2008 are completed or not yet? We don't know.
It's very simple. If there is no fish, there will be no fishermen.
Cheating was part of the game.
This is not Japanese responsibility. It is their responsibility.
It's just a bloody mess.
The black market in tuna has spanned the world. To find out how it works, we've joined forces with the Washington-based International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the ICIJ. Our guide reporter, Kate Wilson. She's travelled from her office by the White House to the tuna ranches of the Mediterranean.
This is a tuna ranch. Ranches have revolutionized the industry. They've brought fabulous profits. They're also controversial.
I'm part of a team of reporters in 7 different countries working for the ICIJ. I've spent most of the year researching the bluefin tuna trade.
Bluefin tuna sit near the top of the marine food chain. Overfishing has shrunk their numbers by around 75%. If tuna stocks collapse, it could affect the entire marine ecosystem.
So this is a new game. We have to play the game in a new way, because otherwise we'll have a complete depletion of the stocks.
At the heart of this dispute, the European Union. Member states include big fishing countries like France, Italy and Spain. The EU's task is to prevent a final and terminal collapse of bluefin stocks.
The very first day when I took office, I came upon bluefin tuna issue. There was a danger of bluefin tuna in the Mediterranean to get collapsed.
In March this year, the EU called for a ban on international trade in bluefin tuna. It was opposed by Japan and its allies. Since 1969, fishing and trade in bluefin has been regulated by ICCAT, the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas. ICCAT observers monitor every catch. The data go to ICCAT's headquarters in Madrid. Membership is made up of countries trading bluefin tuna. They vote on quotas. We've found that on ICCAT's watch, tuna have been looted amid widespread fraud involving Mediterranean fisheries, European governments and dealers in Japan.
I think you have to realize that within the bluefin tuna, all the countries were lying.
In 2008, ICCAT commissioned an independent review. ICCAT was failed by its member states, whose management of the bluefin fisheries was widely seen as an international disgrace. ICCAT's International Panel of Scientists advises on sustainable fishing levels. For years, their recommendations had been ignored.
It's disappointing. If the country would have understood that, they would have implemented around this level, and then there would have been no risk of collapse within this population. But because he didn't listen, and didn't pay at all attention, and didn't implement or even control, and then in 2006 we started to speak about risk of collapse.
That risk had grown along with the introduction of tuna ranches in the late 90s. Most tuna are caught by purse seine vessels. With their huge drawstring nets, they can ensnare entire schools of bluefin. They're tugged, sometimes over hundreds of miles, to be fattened up in huge cages out at sea. These ranches can supply fresh bluefin all year round, instead of just a few days a year when fishing is allowed. They've also made the trade much harder to track.
And he didn't mention a moratorium on ranching. He was just talking about...
I'm with Marcos Garcia Rey, our Spanish ICIJ investigator. We're on our way to talk to an expert on the tuna trade.
I started as a tuna diver working at a ranch. I had my captain ticket also. I worked as a tuna rancher for a number of years.
Roberto Mielgo consults for the fishing industry, environmental groups, and for the ICIJ. He says stocks risk collapse, not just because quotas are too high, but because of a legacy of years of cheating.
Cheating was part of the game and a business necessity in order to survive. For instance, you have 2,000 tons, you have only declared 1,000 tons. So you're going to actually fatten that fish, then you're going to kill and gut it, and you're going to gain between 11 and 14%. You will say, well, I fatten my fish 50, 60, 70%, whatever. So that's a way of laundering a part of those 1,000 you did not declare, and the rest goes to the black market.
Other ways of cheating have involved hiding the true numbers of bluefin transferred to ranch cages. Counting them involves the use of video cameras. One former bluefin fisherman told Kate what was common knowledge within the trade.
It's simple. Those who want to cheat always find a way. They could film and then stop the camera to allow, say, 20 tons of fish to pass through, and then restart the camera. So you see, cheating is always easy.
At the ICIJ, we've calculated that in the decade up to 2008, 1 in 3 bluefin caught in the Mediterranean was caught illegally. That's a haul worth $4 billion.
But in 2007, something happened in France that shocked everyone.
I'm on my way to the port of Sète to talk to fishermen who've been supplying these ranches for years. France has cornered about a fifth of the world's quota and is the only country who's come clean about cheating.
Seized by what civil servants told us was a crisis of conscience, France disclosed its true catch. It had fished nearly twice its quota.
Monsieur, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Joseph Salou is a former Fisheries Ministry official who for 15 years headed an influential industry association. Today, he manages France's biggest tuna fishing company.
Everybody knows that every country committed fraud. Unfortunately, France was the only country to say it openly. And we are also the only ones to pay.
EU countries are jointly represented at ICCAT by the European Commission. The Commission sanctioned France, reducing its fishing quotas.
Do you think it's fair that France has been made an example of?
What can I say? That's the way things are. Everyone agrees that bluefin tuna fishing must be regulated and managed scientifically.
Amid political embarrassment, French officials launched an investigation. 6 fishermen could face prosecution. For the prosecutor, it's been an extraordinary insight into the tricks of the trade.
There are different types of fraud, if you like. There's one person who was put under investigation who admitted that he didn't write down the quantity he actually fished. There are other kinds of frauds. Some false declaration, for example, about catches, about several hundred tons of tuna because an individual has sold his quota to a Turkish group and collected the money on an account in Spain. And to justify this false declaration, he wrote fake customs documents. So you see, there are different types of fraud of which the judges are seized and on which the tribunal will eventually pronounce.
Investigators, the source told us, had requested permission to probe French ministry officials. They'd allegedly adjusted the catch figures down before reporting to the European Commission. But prosecutors limited the inquiry to the industry. The catch figures were collated by the French government. How deeply was it involved? We spoke to a source within France's Ministry of Fisheries on condition of anonymity. He'd worked on bluefin management. He said the ministry had a clear but tacit understanding to downplay the catch figures.
We can't talk about complicity, but rather a mutual understanding. There was a need to keep alive an important economic sector. Up until 2007, the catch declarations were made only at the end of the fishing season. This balance sheet was presented by the French authorities to the European Commission in such a way that it would satisfy more or less the demands of the quota.
Did the ministry know that in 2003, 2004, 2005, that their vessels were overfishing this much?
Yes, the administration was aware.
$4.4 million tons of fish and seafood are caught in European waters every year. In December 2007, the European Union's auditors published a damning report on its member states' overfishing, including bluefin. There was unreliable data, ineffective monitoring, and lax enforcement.
The Court of Auditors report was a very good opportunity for us to change. I'm going to have the legislative proposal next spring, and I'll hope that we'll change the things from the next year.
It wasn't only France that was cheating. The French ministry wouldn't agree to an interview, but said France now follows the rules. The EU does send inspectors on boats. They're run by the Community Fisheries Control Agency, the CFCA.
Dus countries, they make international agreements. And of course the fishing industry says, yeah, but our neighbors are fishing also a little bit more. And then everybody is fishing a little bit more. Well, if everybody is fishing a little bit more, it's much more.
In 2008, a year after France admitted cheating on its quota, ICCAT introduced the BCD, the Bluefin Catch Document. It was meant to be the ultimate weapon against illegal fishing. Every net load of tuna now gets a unique BCD number. It's an ID card. Without it, bluefin cannot be legally traded.
Je pense que c'est un document très précis.
It's a very precise document. I don't know how anyone could break the rules anymore.
Non contrôlé.
Now we can follow the fish from the moment that it is caught in real time to the tug vessels who are bringing it to the farms. In the farms we can control, and then subsequently if it is exported to Japan we can control it as well.
But we've found the very system designed to save the bluefin is flawed and incomplete. The paper records, the BCDs, have to be manually typed into ICCAT's database. For scientists and policymakers, the BCD is vital for informed decisions on safe fishing levels. It's kept secret and is password protected, but we've managed to gain access through an ICCAT member country.
when you look at the catch date, oftentimes it's different formats. So if you're trying to find what was caught on what day, there's no way to do that. Unless you go through and you manually clean all this stuff. You can use this for really good things, but there are so many holes in this data that it's not much better than a pile of papers. You're looking at about 80% of all of the percent catches were missing something. It doesn't have a country, it doesn't have any kind of import information. Some information that would let me know if this fish was legal.
There are more than 60 ranches spread across the Mediterranean. The ICIJ investigators have found instances where ranchers apparently harvested more fish than they'd acquired.
You can see that there was a Spanish vessel that reported transferring 38 fish into a ranch, and yet 1,736 were reported harvested. We've seen this in 20 different ranches. Fish don't reproduce in cages, and so while you would normally see fish get heavier, you wouldn't see them increase in numbers. I can't say that it's cheating. All I can say is that, we're talking about twice as many, 3 times as many, 10 times as many harvested as are being transferred into cages. So you wouldn't expect to see these numbers, and fishermen have said the same thing.
There is not a given year that is complete so far. So it seems that the system that has been put is not really practical. The fish can go from a small boat to a bigger boat, to a bigger boat to a farm to another farm, and then exported to the Tokyo market, but not exported as a given fish. It can be exported processed. So you have to track and to know when you have a piece of tow arriving at the sushi Tokyo market, that this part of the fish belongs to the same fish as another part that is maybe on another market. So just for one fish, just for one fish is huge. But when you have million fish or hundreds of thousand fish every year,
Despite the challenges, one ranch has a solution. Group Balfego runs a bluefin ranch in Spain. From the moment it's landed, every tuna is tracked using a straightforward barcode system, like those in any supermarket. Every fish and every part of it can now be followed through to market.
Tracking systems need to do what you see here, using barcodes and digital information. It works perfectly well in other industries, and it can work perfectly for fishing. You cannot trace fish with handwritten documents and photocopies.
Applied across the industry, Balfego's approach could enable monitors to check the catch in real time. The data from the BCDs is vital for making stock assessments. It's collated by the ICCAT Secretariat, which also coordinates the activities of the ICCAT Commission, made up of member states.
For bluefin tuna, we have some difficulties for about more than 10 years now. There is overfishing, and we had some illegal fishing. And the Commission has tried several times to deal with this and to take some management measures.
We analyzed the database for 2008 and 2009 and found that in nearly half of all of the cases, they're missing crucial information that would allow a person to verify that that fish was legally caught. So is anybody analyzing the database?
Of course, we database. I think it has been analyzed for the bluefin tuna, for the stock assessment.
Scientists say that they use this data to make recommendations on catch limits. How can they do that if 2008 won't be complete for another 2 years?
I have no idea. It depends. If they are not completed. Carmen, the BCDs of 2008 are completed or not yet? We don't know.
They're absolutely not complete. I've analyzed the data.
But you know why you ask it if you know. I keep telling you that these BCDs we just started because in this system it's not as easy as you think, because it takes time to deal with all this. So we started this in 2008. And we are trying, and we are explaining to contracting parties the difficulty we are facing using this document, and we are having here people using this and we are having difficulties. So it works for something we are improving, but we still need. I told you it's not perfect yet, but we still need to improve the system.
And do you think you'll make it electronic? I mean, I know that there was some discussion about doing that.
If the Commission decides so, I have no problem.
Japan's Tsukiji fish market, the biggest in the world, where most of the Mediterranean tuna catch ends up. And where some see worrying signs. Ironically, it's here that we might find a more accurate picture of what's happening under the waters of the Mediterranean. Mature bluefin are important for breeding. They can spawn up to 10 times more eggs than younger adults. Over the years, the size and weight of fresh bluefin coming through Tsukiji have been meticulously recorded.
This is market data pertaining to the fresh bluefin tuna auction market in Japan from 2002 to 2009. This clearly shows that something very wrong is happening. The fish is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, meaning that the caught population of spawners is reducing rapidly, and that is a clear sign that the stock is in bad shape.
Trafficking in bluefin is a global market. In 2006, Japan and Australia commissioned a confidential joint report to gauge the state of the southern bluefin tuna, a sister species to the Atlantic bluefin. We've obtained a copy. It describes Japanese traders as playing a central role in the tuna black market. It lists widespread overfishing and laundering of tuna imports by labelling them as cheaper species. But today, the world's biggest consumer of bluefin may be part of the solution. Japan's refused to accept thousands of tons of Mediterranean bluefin from exporters who couldn't satisfy them. Their catch was legal.
This is not Japanese responsibility. It is their responsibility to demonstrate legality of the products. So unless they demonstrate, we don't import. Even 2 years ago, we made it very clear to the people, and I'm pretty sure they know what is the requirement. But they failed. Then they have to accept the consequences.
Migratory species are always hard to track. Bluefin fishermen insist current fishing levels are sustainable.
I've never seen so many tuna as in the past 2 years. In 2009, we started fishing on June 2nd. By the 11th, we'd already fished our quota. And we took only the fish we wanted. When we left, we had to close our eyes so as not to look at the fish we were leaving behind.
What he told me was echoed by other fishermen and ranchers I've talked to. But that's only part of the story. There are doubts over even the most basic counting operations.
In September this year, another internal report, this time commissioned by ICCAT, found its observers had no reliable means to accurately estimate the number and weight of tuna caught. Some didn't have snorkels or binoculars. More needed to be done to stop possible manipulation of the underwater footage used for counting bluefin. On the vital BCDs, it described cases where ICCAT observers had been obliged to sign catch documents they had no means of authenticating. Mr. Meski still reckons there are grounds for optimism.
The situation is not as bad as we thought. And there are some possibilities if we adopt several management measures with the precaution, we can have a better situation and the stock could be rebuilt.
As Europe cleans up its act, branching activity is passing to less regulated waters in North Africa and Turkey, a new challenge for the regulators. This month, all ICCAT member states meet in Paris to consider the state of Atlantic bluefin tuna. Their own scientists calculate a 60% chance the stock can be stabilized if fishing can be limited to between 0 and 13,500 tons. But they can't be sure. They still don't have reliable figures.
So our goal is really to know where we are today. What we are interested in is what are the bloody catch. We don't just want to know what are the real catch. We could have avoided this situation. It was so obvious that if we continue like that, it was not sustainable.
With years of fraud and cheating, a management system that still doesn't work, the truth is that bluefin tuna are still living on the edge.